themselves. And I'll start over here with you, Stacey.
Sure. Stacy Alexander, Director for Student Services.
Jim Vazina, Finance.
Hardy Merrill, WNUSD Grafton.
Priscilla Lambert, representing Rockingham, which I'm chair of, and clerk of this board.
Chris Kibbe, Rockingham School Board and Treasurer of the WNESU.
I've been Cheryl Charles, chair of the Westminster Board and chair of the SU Board.
Andy Haas, Superintendent of Schools.
Team BLC representing Westminster.
June Streeter, representing the high school board from Westminster.
Lynn Morgan, representing Athens and the Athens Grafton Board.
Jason Terry, representing Rockingham.
Thank you. And then online, I can see Kathy. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Kathy Siano Goodwin, representing Grafton, Athens.
Very good. And I see Jennifer Keenan. I'll go to David. Yeah. Jennifer, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Keenan. I'm Wyndham Northeast's Early Education Program Principal.
Great. Is there anybody else online that we've missed?
No.
Okay, great. And Mr. Clark and Molly, thank you both. Molly, you're a voting member. Would you introduce yourself?
Molly Bannock, representing the high school board from Westminster.
Thank you.
David Clark, high school board, Westminster.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a pleasure to have you all here. And we're officially underway. I think there are a couple of adjustments to the agenda. I have two that I've been told about. One of those is that we have already approved the minutes of March 22nd, so we need not take action on that. We will be taking action on the April 5th minutes. And I've been told, Andy, that there's a 7.B approval of something called LEAP.
Yep.
That we might be adding to the agenda. Let me ask if there are any other adjustments to the agenda.
I don't know.
Okay, I will say that we had, particularly with Mr. Clark here, as one who has raised this, we've had on the agenda actually a pre-K update. At a certain point in time, we were not sure that Ms. Keenan was going to be able to be here tonight. We will have an update and we'll address some questions about that. It won't be quite as formal as it would have been were it still on the agenda, but there will be an update. And thank you for raising it. So with that, let me see if there are any communications and public comment. Okay. Anybody online have any public comment?
I don't see anyone.
All right. The next order of business is to review and approve the board minutes for April 5, 2023. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the board minutes.
Thank you, Lynn. Moved by Lynn Morgan. Any discussion?
I have a comment. I have a comment on the minutes. I know we had a long discussion about Title I, and we did discuss procedures. There's nothing in the minutes to address that. I do see a note on the superintendent's report today that it has a note on there, but there's nothing in the minutes.
Would you recommend that there be some item added to the minutes to reflect discussion on the Title I? All right. Tara is taking minutes, and I think she can make a note to that effect to add that there was discussion about Title I funding. Is that adequate, Kathy?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, there's a motion on the floor. Any more discussion? The motion would be to accept the minutes as written with the addition proposed by Ms. Siana. So all of those in favor, I'll start with you, Kathy.
Aye.
Thank you. I don't see any other board members. Jason?
Yes.
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 Okay, and yes. Well, thank you very much. And yes as well. So those are unanimously approved with that correction. As we move into reports, I will make this comment that there's a tremendous amount of substance involved in all of the reports tonight. There's really a good deal to be addressed. So I thank those of you who come forward with the reports. And I think for the board, as we each listen carefully, I'd urge us to think in terms of clarifying questions as we hear what's being reported. If we feel there's a need for that, and then we'll have as much discussion as seems feasible as time allows. But we'll start with really a process of looking especially for clarifying questions. With that, should we start with finance?
Please.
Okay.
I've got.
Unless you want to get up.
Thank you.
One-sided or two-sided, Jim? One-sided or two-sided? Oh, no, I can use this. This is my input. Thank you.
So with the financial report, and I'm looking at page 1. On the expenditure side, down at the bottom, you'll see transportation of students, and we're over by 106,000. And again, much of that 106,000 is repairs, to the ongoing fleet, the old fleet of buses. And again, it's we've still got, it seems like we're getting close to the end here, but we've still got, 2 months of continued repairs. So I don't know where that will go, but it certainly will increase as we get closer to the end. Food service, which shows $328,000 over. And again, I will say, the one issue that shows up in here is the summer food service program. And again, that wasn't budgeted as we should have budgeted, and we should have budgeted it for this coming summer as well. But the revenues for the summer programming offset. So I will say right now for April, May, and half of June, you should end up with about, close to $220,000, $40,000 somewhere in there. So it will be close to balancing out the food service program. I don't see any other hiccups along the way. Again, we've, keep in mind, we've tried to streamline some of the accounts, and technology is one, which as we're moving forward, the technology now is all under the SU as it's going into next year. Other than that, I think the one thing that as we go into next year that we will see is that the expenses for the pre-K program will come into here. And I messed up in last year's budget, and Chris was very gentle with me, but he knew that I should have, even though pre-K expenses are offset by Medicaid, it's still any monies at all that you're expending for whatever we're doing has to go into the budget. So again, I got a little fuzzy there after a while, but I was thinking that because Medicare is picking up 100%, let's not worry about it. And where it got even
There's still time.
What got even more squirrely is we assessed for the pre-K program. Now, not a big deal because, hey, look, if we have $1 at the end of the year, it'll just all return back. I mean, it's not like we can go out and expend any money. We won't. So I think we're gonna come out okay. As we go forward, those items are gonna be corrected. And at some point in time, as we get into the new accounting system, this should operate fairly smoothly. So on the revenue side, I will say, on the revenue side, we've received in on line 22, which is your special education offset that the state gives you. And we've received 100% of that at this time. So way over on the right, it shows 1182 being not received, and we did receive it this week.
Okay.
So we're doing okay. The one thing that I want to make sure, if you look at the bottom under the 2023 adopted revenue, it says 10,315,000. Well, you know, that's accurate. It's as accurate as I could get it with the data that I had available. But I just want to make sure as we go forward, any budget, anywhere, at any time, the expense has to match the revenue. So if you look at page 1 here, the expense is 10,729,000.
Yeah.
So you are essentially 414,000 out of whack. So I would say I would probably balance that, and I've got a sheet here, and this is sorry, but I just wanted to show you. This is what I'm going to do to balance out, at least for this year, and next year we'll balance. So I brought Medicaid in at the bottom. David, I'll give you my sheet after I get done. So somehow we've got to balance out. I mean, if we have authorization to expend 10,700,000, we've got to show revenues, and I'm showing we will bring in Medicaid. We know we will, and so the placeholder to balance us out now, and you'll see it in the next financial report, is down at where the federal revenues are. I've got 414,622 to balance. So
Yeah, real.
yes, I mean, I think it's real because honestly, we know we're going to bring in 400,000 for revenue for the Medicaid, and there's a balance in there anyway, so we're okay.
Question. So, yeah, but you can
Keep me
only
honest.
use it for the early ed program. So are there early ed expenses in this budget?
Yes,
And you're-
yes.
Or in this report?
It's on 729.
Well, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
Because that, I have brought it in, and I have brought it in next year's.
Well, but you'll have a budget for the early ed program
Yes,
eventually.
yes,
I'm
no,
certain you will someday.
I've already introduced that in the 24s,
Right, so
So-
that's fine.
yes. But,
But are there early ed expenses hitting this?
no,
Yeah, so
so anyways, we'll have to work on
We'll
that.
have to
I don't, I don't have a instant answer, but somewhere we have to balance.
well, it's strange that there's a $400,000
Well,
difference.
And I will say this, initially, Chris, I took indirect cost. I plugged indirect cost at 414.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna get 414. We're gonna get some, and there'll be some other miscellaneous revenues.
Well, indirect costs would be perfectly valid.
Yes,
Yeah,
but not,
yeah, just
So
don't
anyway,
have enough.
yes. So we'll work at it, but,
We'll talk about it.
yep.
Is that the end of your report?
You know what,
I'm sure there are questions. That's
yeah,
okay.
sure. That's probably gonna do it for me. I will say, because you asked me to address where the heck is the audit report
Correct.
for the SU? And they're right now working on single audit, which I think is a federal piece. So I just will say there, as of Tuesday, she was looking for a list of employees for ESSER, Title 1A, and wanted the contracts and time certs with PARS for each employee. So we're trying to get her that information. You know, within the next week and a half, I think we'll have that to her. And they will have completed the SU audit. I did talk with Ron Smith because I do want to start clearing the audit. And I would ask that each board review it, review the finished final audit and accept it. I'm going to try to get Ron Smith and Samantha to tie in with whatever questions you may have. And again, I think it's important that we all have a solid foundation of what grant monies are there, what capital reserve funding is there. And I just will say this because I wasn't sure how the Haber funds, there's roughly, I don't know, 240,000 of Haber funds, something like that.
Right, yeah.
But with the high school audit, page 18 has the Haber funds in there. And I just want to make sure that it's clear to all of us that we know what monies are there. And again, our hope is to set up specific accounts, as I've mentioned in the past, and the bank account so that they're earning interest and the interest will be dumped right in there. So I know it's not fast enough and it's not fast enough for me, but I can only say this, it's got to be right. So I apologize for the lateness, but hey, we're gonna get it right. So I'm sorry, that's all I've got.
Okay, no, thank you. I've got a couple of questions, but let me open it to others. Chris, did you have anything else?
Sure.
Priscilla? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Jim, when I was on the WNESU board a couple of years ago, we had a transportation committee, and we never really had a meeting. But you know, one of the things that was brought up back then was the buses, and are they being utilized correctly? As far as like, if one big bus is going out to Athens and we're picking up just one or two students, you know, can we look at, you know, one bus making like a circle loop, picking up all the kids and having buses like capacity coming to reduce costs? So that's one of my questions. Have we thought about doing a time study on that? Again, I haven't been on this board in a couple of years. I don't know if anyone knows where that is at.
So, went to Butler's, Transportation. And they were in for the last week or so, doing just that, looking at our operations, but also looking at our routes and if there's a way to consolidate down routes. And then also we had a conversation with them about the potential of providing maintenance for our buses, because there could be a cost savings there as opposed to going to ATG and Catamount all the time, where they're servicing our buses up in Springfield. It's who we know and stuff like that. So typically, if we've got a brake light out on a bus, you got to send it down to ATG or Catamount. It's going to sit there for a little while, whereas they're talking about they'll send a guy down at 8 o'clock at night and he'll just flip out that light, type of thing. So, so we're not incurring downtime and costs there. And then we've also talked to them about asking for a proposal if they were to essentially take over our fleet of buses, and then we could lease new buses from them, what that cost would be, so we could look at that piece.
That was my next question. Thank you.
And we did begin conversations about could they take over the whole operation. They felt they're just not there.
Right.
They got some internal things they need to work on, so they wouldn't be able to take that on right now. But
Who is Butler and where are they from?
Butler's is out of,
They're out of Woodstock, Lebanon, Hartford area.
Okay.
So
they handle Springfield.
That was my next question, if I may, Cheryl. Do you know how many buses we have total? I know
15, 17?
20. Well, 20 with the little ones.
20, okay, yeah, so we've got about 20 buses, and they're all pretty, there's only one small bus that's fairly new, and everything else is pretty old.
When we buy new buses, do we lease them? Because I think if you lease them, they will get repaired at
We've done a
their
lease,
cost.
so in fact, it was in part of my report. We just got approved through ESSER for a bus, and to do that, you have to do a lease versus purchase cost comparison, and the cost still comes out cheaper to purchase your own bus as opposed to leasing right now, in the long term piece of it. To do it straight up that way. But what I've asked Renee to do, and to be very honest with you, we've had we have, like everywhere else, we have a real shortage of drivers. And so she hasn't really been able to do the analysis that I've asked her to do, which is to look at consolidating down those routes and can we get by with less buses type of thing, and or shorter buses. And so that was why bringing Butler's in was part of that, is to get someone else in that's not, because she's so busy. I mean, I think she's doing 3 runs right now, to be honest with you, because of that. So
Cheryl, if I, just one more, on the bills. So if you say you fix a taillight and it doesn't work, they bill you and you bill it and they come back, do they bill you again, or do they look at it as a callback? Does somebody like micromanage those bills to make sure that we're not getting billed 2-3 times and just, for the same repair?
I'd have to look into that. I can't answer that question right here, but I can get back to you on that. So,
thank you.
Other questions, Chris?
Well, this is not a question, it's a comment. Going out to bid for bus services is a decision the board would have to make, and not, my opinion, I don't think the business manager and the superintendent should be taking the initiative that way. It's more controversial than you know. There are lots of people, well, first of all, the last time I did an analysis on it, it was cheaper what we were doing. And people know our bus drivers, our parents do, and it's just plain illegal to ask one company to make a proposal. You have to go out to bid, and you need the board to tell you to do it.
So I might have used it wrong. We haven't gone out to bid. We've just asked them to give us a ballpark figure, so that we know what we're working with, so that are we even in the realm of having it? So we haven't asked them we haven't gone out to a single bid. If we know we have to put it out to bid for everybody to do that. So we haven't done that. We've looked just at how we could potentially, like, all we got is give us an analysis, and then we'll still have to go out to bid, and we know that, so. I don't know.
It's the board's decision, and there are just sometimes they're just a big decision that you need to have the board talk about before you go down this road. So
I think your point's taken.
it may very well be the way to go, the thing to do, and everybody will say hallelujah, but I want it to be done correctly, and I'm concerned that all this conversation's gone on without the board being clued in.
I think that's now noted. Thank you. I see two more hands. Priscilla?
Sure. Yeah, just to kind of comment on it too. We were just told just a minute ago that you had to do an analysis to buy the bus through ESSER, and it was cheaper to purchase.
Mhm.
So I think we've already got an analysis in one form that's telling us that it's definitely cheaper to purchase and run our own system.
Right, and that would be an example of using federal monies and having to comply with the process that was associated with that. And for the record, bigger question that Chris is asking, and I was just looking at our schedule when we hear from various of the staff of the SU, we have transportation on the agenda coming up pretty soon, in the next month or so. And I think that'll be a good opportunity for in-depth. I see a lot of hands, and I want to remind everybody that we have a lot to cover tonight, so I'll urge clarifying questions. I'll go to Teen and then Molly.
I just do have a clarifying question. Were you talking about you went out to bid for a bus company to like drive our buses, like in or you're for servicing the buses?
Who's to purchase?
Who's to service the
Jim, I think
buses,
was
right?
gonna try and clarify a little bit, but.
I just want to say, in the finance business office,
Right.
and I'll make this very clear, it's always, how can we do something with less money?
Right.
And we always have to go that route. And I just want to make it clear, nobody's gone out to bid for this at all. Although companies have said, no, hey, look, we're not interested in doing anything with you. Sorry, not going to happen. And I said, well, I just have to explore those options. And again, if you're buying 50 to 100 buses, you can work it a little cheaper than when we're buying 1 or 2 buses. So again, my responsibility is to always look at trying to do something less expensive and to save money, because we want to throw it into a classroom or a teacher somewhere.
Molly.
I just want to let everybody know that I hope we all do as a board, welcome anyone trying to get more information to see if we are doing it the right way and the best way. Nobody's making decisions, but there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that people, none of us are gonna be able to go find out that's something that happens in the SU office to see if we're doing the right thing. So I welcome any information like that, and thank you, Andy, for making sure we're doing the right thing, and Jim.
And Chris. Let me ask the audience here that's on Zoom, could you hear Molly? She was far away from the mic. Were you able to hear? Oh, Karen says yes. And thank you, Jennifer. Okay, very good. Excellent. And Karen Blanchard, welcome. We knew you were delayed a little bit. Another board member, voting board member is here for the record. Thank you. So any other questions for Jim, Zena? The couple that I've got, it's just a follow-up from Mr. McCullough's questions last time. You did address the audit issue. It is coming. He had asked for that. And you and he had a little bit of dialogue about the indirect costs. Since that time, Andy has provided more information about that to all board members, addressing kind of what we can and can't use it for. You know, just to make sure that's kind of, again, clear for the record.
And I just want to say, just because I don't think it's well understood, what the heck is indirect cost? And if you think in the outside world, you know, it's the G&A, the general and administrative cost. So as you've got somebody buying, the purchasing agent, or, you know, the finance, the accounting, those other administrative offices, this gets pushed back in. This is similar. The indirect is, you know, the administrative cost of the office, you know, the payroll, the finance, the superintendent, all of that gets pushed back in as much as we can.
Thank you. And then I think Mr. Kibbe, Chris, the chair of the finance committee, if you could add to an agenda for that group coming up to work with Jim on the Medicaid issue, the pre-K, those expenses and revenues, so that we have at least starting with that committee, have a better understanding of how to sort that out.
Yep.
That'd be really
I
helpful.
made some notes.
Thank you very much. That's great. Okay, Superintendent, your report.
It is lengthy, so I'm just gonna try and touch on some things. I did try to clarify about indirect costs, just as Jim just did. I think basically the other piece I would just add is indirect costs are, it's a way that we're able to get some dollars back out of grants, as opposed to all of us who are touching grants constantly recording our time. And that would be the only other way to do it. So there's a percentage, and it's different for every grant. And as I said, so like in our title grants, we never ask for indirect costs, because we want 100% of those funds to go back to our students and go directly to it. We have, done some indirect costs with the ESSER grants, just because of the complexity and the enormity of those grants that have caused a lot of work for a lot of folks. So that's where we've gotten the most. And we're not able to get any indirect costs out of our Individuals with Disability Act or IDEA grants. So 100% of those funds have to go to students. So we found out that there was a settlement with the Jewel company, and that's the company that produces the vape devices. And we were part of a large class action lawsuit. And so our amount that we got out of it was about just a little over $26,000. There'll be some lawyer fees that come out of that piece, but what I recommend to the board is kind of what Jim was talking about earlier with some other things, that we earmark those dollars for our substance abuse programs. I think it would be appropriate to go directly back into that programming. And so we'd like to do that piece. And speaking of substance abuse, we've been dealing all year. Heather Warias, who was our substance abuse counselor, she took the position of work-based learning coordinator this year. And in the past, she had been a less than full FTE. And so it's been challenging to fill the position. And I worked with the state, and they awarded us more dollars than what we've asked for. So we get the full amount now. In the past, we've only asked for a slight amount. Even the state doesn't know why. I don't know why either, but I said, can we up that? And they said, sure. And so we're getting the full amount. And that's allowing us to go out for full-time. And so David Bingham, who is a school-based clinician for us at Westminster, has a background in substance abuse counseling, and so was interested in moving into that position. So we're moving him slowly this year as we hired Heather Lander to fill his position at Westminster. And so there's a lot of onboarding going on, because we want to make sure the students are getting what they need. But then David will be full-time towards the end of this year doing the SAT work, and then he'll be based out of the middle school because the conversation David and I had was that's the time to really try and affect change with kids. Like focusing on kids at the high school, we might be a little late, but if we can catch them early in the middle school when they start to begin that risky behavior, we can maybe stem that off. So we're going to house him there. He's going to effectively work at all our buildings, but he'll be housed at the middle school so we can really utilize him there. And then he is working towards his full certification as a drug and alcohol counselor, so he can actually do the counseling as opposed to just referring families out. And then you don't know if the families, they may or may not follow up. And so this way we can provide that. I provided the guidelines and procedures for therapy animals in our buildings. It's pretty lengthy, as a couple board members have noted, and part of that is, it's not fully recommended that there are therapy animals in buildings, and previously we haven't allowed them in the buildings, and our attorneys they lean more towards that. It's probably not good to do it, but there's a lot of research that shows that there is positivity about it. So we wanted to make sure that we had some solid backing. And so we did a lot of research looking at other programs and adopted what we thought were the best from some of those. We're also implementing some social media guidelines. We're finding, there's always been a policy about how social media and families and teachers and students interact. It's not always followed 100% to fidelity, and we need to get back to that. But bigger than that, it has to do with part of our communication planning and moving to ways that we can ensure that we're following FERPA laws and when we're communicating. A lot of times our coaches might communicate with students through a text message or a group text. We don't control that. We don't have any means of knowing where that is, and so we need to have something in place to be able to know where that is. There's a lot of Facebook pages out there that don't belong to WNESU or any of our schools that are using our logos and things of that nature. So we feel that there's a need to kind of pull back on that a little bit and have a little bit oversight to make sure that we're being represented correctly out there. The cognitive assessment, I provided you with a bunch of letters that have been sent. Deb Cardane, in a Jerry Maguire moment, one night wrote a letter and sent it to me and said, "Can you take a look at this, and is this okay?" And I looked at it and I said, "I'm right on board with it." We shopped it around a little bit in our region. We wordsmithed it a little bit. I took it to all of our superintendents in the region. Everybody agreed to sign on to it. We sent that up to Secretary French before he left. The Vermont Superintendents Association asked for a copy of it. They, along with many other associations, decided that they wanted to draft a second letter, a follow-up letter to the interim secretary, which was sent out. There was a very quick response, which was, "Thank you, keep moving forward."
They extended the window though.
Oh yeah, they extended the
By 2
window.
weeks. You get 2 extra weeks.
I can unfortunately report that we got an email today that there's a huge problem with the 9th grade assessment and the text to speech. And so they put a pause on that for students who need those accommodations, but we have no window of when that's going to open. And I learned today also that the some of our teams that were taking some of the trainings, there's still lots and lots of holes and they cannot get into certain areas to do the training. And we're supposed to start providing the assessment next week in some of those schools. So I don't think it's done, but basically the interim secretary has said that they cannot allow it as a pilot. So We're gonna do the best we can. We're not, we're gonna try and get our students to do the best they can, but we're also being very aware that that could be reflective in our scores.
Sounds like another e-finance state. Oh, that was great.
Well, so in defense of the state, you have to, you have a certain number of year contract with an assessment provider, and the SBAC assessment provider was done. Now, that window was probably smaller than it should have been of rollout, but I think it fell normally in, like, the contract was up, go out and get someone else, and so, but I don't know the ins and outs behind that, so. Summer programming, just an FYI, so we're gonna be offering 2 sites this year. So in elementary, we'll be at Westminster School, and then we'll have a site at the middle school for those middle school age students. And so any parents who are interested, there's links on the website, and information has been sent home repeatedly to students and the school notifications as they go home.
And forgot to do the principal.
Go on. Oh, thanks. Oh, there you go. Thanks. We just wanted to announce and welcome, not welcome really, but Henry Bailey has been appointed as the new principal for Bellows Falls Middle School. He's currently serving as the interim principal and doing an outstanding job. He's actively right now looking to fill his former position, which is the assistant principal position, and really kind of just, you go in that building and it's like a breath of fresh air. It's the best way to tell, you can feel a sense of calm. The students are respectful. I walk through and, I don't get a lot of, kids of who are you or anything like, I get like, who are you or but it's like, like inquisitive, and then kids are like, hello, how are you? And stuff like that. And very different feel from previous years. So it's really nice to see, and I'm glad the teachers are supporting him and that move forward. So let me take questions as we go along, or is that?
I was thinking we would wait till his report was done if we can. Thank you.
So we've contracted with New Solutions K-12. They're a group that's known for multi-tiered systems of support, helping with scheduling and looking at how the day runs and how we support students in all students, but through regular education and special education, and how does our schedule drive that instructional practices. So we've asked them to come in and look at both our middle school and high school. They're beginning this year, but it's work that's going to go on all through next year, up through the scheduling piece. So we're anticipating some stuff. We're meeting with them. Our first big meeting is tomorrow to jump on that. As I mentioned earlier about the new school bus, principal evaluations. So we'll be pushing those out, very similar to what we did in the fall with a stakeholder survey, but then I also provide that feedback to the principals along with a rubric that we're using to provide them, and then all our principals will be getting written summative evals from me at the end of the year. And then at our last meeting, the discussion was around title grants and procedures. So I provided you with our current, what's up on the websites. And then we are currently just updating those guidelines and procedures. We have to do it anyway for our title grants, so we're in the process of updating those. And then I provided you a list just of capital improvement projects that Steve Horton's working on, with just some projected numbers and just where we are status wise. So take questions.
You're going to address the pre-K and.
So Jennifer is here to address the pre-K, and so I can have her do that, or I can take questions and then have her do that.
Let's take questions from you first, and then you introduce Jennifer as part of your report to update us on pre-K. So open to questions. Lynn was first.
On the summer programming, there'll be bus transportation, even like from Athens and
Yes,
Grafton?
yeah. So we did that last year.
Okay, and there wasn't a shortage of space last year, having just the one school dealing with. folks at
No,
the school?
we do have limited space,
Yeah.
but what we're able to do, when we did this last year, because we consolidated down to 2 elementary spaces last year,
Mhm.
we actually looked at the numbers from the previous years, and then when we did it this year, we looked at the numbers again of those folks that wanted to participate, and we anticipated. And so we were able to ensure that we had spaces. We also have a whole method of how we do it, so it's not a first come, first serve. We actually try to look, because it's, we're using ESSER funds, we're trying to target loss of learning. So we try to do that. So right now, I think we've been able to accommodate everybody who's looking at it.
Okay, next person.
Yeah, on the new solutions K-12, where is that funding coming from? Because that's normally an in-house and counseling and that kind of thing to look at our programming and stuff, and they should be able to schedule.
Oh,
So it's coming through ESSER because it has to do with trying to address academic loss of learning, and how we are also providing different structures under an MTSS system. So a multi-tiered system of support. It's looking at it in a new lens, but also looking at how do we provide intervention blocks and interventions for students in the current day, so that students were able to curb students from being referred on to special education. So that is the real big push, is to look at how we can better utilize our current structure and make it more student-driven as opposed to teacher-driven.
Thank you. Chris?
Most.
Okay. Jim, you're next.
I just had a question about the summer programming. So Westminster is K through 6, and middle school is 5 through 8. Do you get the 5th and 6th graders, are they allowed to go to Westminster, or do you get to choose?
So typically, what we dealt with last year was if a student would be going to Athens or Grafton, we actually let them choose what they wanted to do. I think there was just one or two that chose to go to the middle school. If a student is a Rockingham student is going to be going to the middle school, we highly encourage that they do the middle school program. I'm trying to think, I know there was discussion last year where a parent was feeling like maybe their child wasn't ready, and so we have that discussion with them.
Thank you.
I just kind of building off what Priscilla said, I'm excited to hear about this new solutions thing because we're in like a new paradigm of education right now. I think MTSS, the scheduling is like one of the largest stumbling blocks we have in terms of like creating an effective MTSS system. So if there are people who are experts in this area and can help guide us, I think that's going to be, I'm excited to hear what they come back with, because it is way more complex than scheduling has been in the past, because you can't just pull kids out of classes to provide them intervention.
Two questions. The therapy animal guidelines and the social media guidelines, they tend to fall in the policy arena, and I wondered if they had gone to the policy committee. I wondered whether you need any board action.
So boards create the policy, and then the policy says that the superintendent will create the guidelines and the procedures. And so they are a result of the policies that are in place. So we've tried to create procedures around those policies.
So there are policies for therapy animals
There are policies for animals on school grounds.
in the state, and we have one. Do we have anything in our WNESU?
For
Policies?
therapy animals?
No, not therapy, but animals in
Yeah,
classroom.
yeah.
And so you're saying this is guidelines specifically around therapy?
Correct.
Okay, and it was really quite robust. I mean, I read through all of that, and it was quite detailed. So you're saying these are guidelines, they're not policies, and they're related to existing policies. So, okay, that's helpful. So with that, let's go to pre-K.
So I asked Jennifer just to be here. She originally was on the docket, and she had just come back from break and wasn't feeling 100%, so I didn't want to push her to do a full report tonight. But she was feeling up to at least attend to give a brief overview just of where we are with numbers and things of that nature. So Jennifer Keenan, who is our pre-K principal teacher.
My teaching principal. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Jennifer, hang on.
Yeah, just before you start, I want to add the context that Mr. Clark, who's here this evening, at a previous board meeting of ours, was asking, how are we going ahead with this pilot related to what we learned from the assessment that was done before, and some things that we did led us or led you to recommend this pilot. It's not exactly what was initially proposed. So I just want you to know that there was some question around it and what is it that led us to do this. I think just with that background, that would be helpful for you to address it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Andy and I presented all of the work around the study that we had done, which is all on a slideshow, the report that Andy and I gave, that I believe he has in his computer, and he could share with Mr. Clark, or we could put it on the website. Andy and I talked about that. But as a result of that feasibility study we had done, to catch everybody up who missed that board meeting where Andy and I reported on it, we plan to use the Medicaid funds on hand to fund an expansion of our pre-K offerings. And we are able to do that with no cost to the taxpayers next year or the year after. So this pilot is a 2-year pilot to see if we're able to get enough families to come to the pre-K full-time, full week. And the reason that's a thing that we wonder is because we say full day, full week, but it's really full school day, full school week. And some families need full day. They need 7:30 to 5, even during school vacation. So we have this plan to run this pilot again at no taxpayer cost next year. So we did I'm looking at my notes to make sure I hit everything. That's why I'm looking away. But we did a big publicity push starting in March with a lot of help from Kate O'Connor, and initial applications for slots in the public sites came in, plenty of applications. I was quite pleased to see that. And the applications were due Monday. And we had both paper applications and online applications available. So Monday at midnight, which is the other reason why I'm not prepared to give full numbers right now, because I haven't even talked to families, because as Cheryl and Andy mentioned, I teach children also, so I couldn't. The plan is to call families and talk to them tomorrow and Friday. So a big publicity push, and we got some nice applications that were due on Monday. We got a lot of them, and we were able to give everyone who was in by Monday's deadline the schedule that they requested, which is exciting. That's many full school day, full school week, and some part-time, which is what they wanted. We were not able to give every single family their first choice of site, but everyone that got in by the deadline has the schedule they wanted. And again, I want to talk to the families first before getting really more specific than that. I think that that's fair. So we'll be calling them tomorrow and Friday with the details for their children. And after we get all of that squared away with those families, we're going to turn to the applications that have come in since the deadline. I predict, based on seeing how many applications have come in since the deadline, that the pre-K rooms will be entirely full. And I'm looking forward to, we moved my pre-K report to next month's agenda. I look forward to coming back next month with specific district numbers, site-specific numbers, kid age specific, and really any other details that people seek.
Thank you. I'll make a
my
comment or two and then open it up for questions. Thank you very much, Jennifer. I would point out that this isn't the same thing. As you said very accurately, this is an expansion of our current pre-K program. It's not the same thing that we initially proposed and which the feasibility study was looking at. This doesn't include infants. This is simply an expansion of our 3, 4, and 5-year-old program at 2 existing locations. Doesn't add a great many children, actually.
Actually, Cheryl, not to interrupt you, it actually is. It depends. There's stuff with full-time and part-time, and there's complications of numbers I'm not going to go into. It's not more children. It may even be fewer children.
Okay.
More hours.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't run the risk of competing with other providers in the area, which was another concern.
Absolutely. Thank you for underlining that.
Right. And so with that, and the other piece that I didn't hear you mention is you also, in between the feasibility study and launching the invitation to people to apply, you conducted a survey in the SU to see what the interest was.
Absolutely.
So it was a little bit of an informal market research study that led us to going forward with it. So with that, questions from anybody, including you? Chris,
a comment, really. I happen to know that part of this plan going forward is we need 4 additional qualified professionals to work in the 2 sites. And so if you're out there and you are early childhood educator or interested in it or know someone who might be, we offer very competitive pay and benefits, and it's really important. We really need these people because of the regulations. There have to be a certain number of adults in the classroom. So help us beat bushes. Poor Stacy, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we need them too.
Sorry, Stacy. Right, the pre-K program can't run understaffed. If we don't get the staff, we can't open the classroom. So Mr. Kibbe is correct.
And any other,
I'm excited that this is moving forward. Thank you, Jennifer. I know you're not feeling well, but it's nice to hear that there's a lot of interest and that there's going to be a full-time option. I think it'll be helpful for families, but it's also going to be helpful for our kids as they move into kindergarten and beyond.
It is very exciting, teen. I completely agree.
Great. Priscilla, did you? No? Anybody else? All right, well, thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll look forward to an even more detailed report where you have a chance to analyze all that information.
Right. I believe Andy and Nicole already have me on next month's agenda. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. You can go ahead and sign up, I'm sure. Huh?
Okay.
Great. Okay, I think that's it for the superintendent's report. And now we turn to student services. Sure.
Which would you prefer I start with? I know there was the article that came out in the Vermont Digger, so would people prefer to hear about the target monitoring or?
Just go through your report.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so the first page is just about numbers. And even since I did this report, some of the numbers have increased. Westminster is up to 12 in process and the high school is now up to 9 in process, which means the student is in some sort of evaluation process through special education. So those are a little bit different. Right now, we have almost 270 active with almost 30 plus in process. If we continue on the path that we are on, we could end up with over 300 students on IEPs being serviced in the district, which would put us at about 30%, given that we have just under 1,000 students enrolled right now. Sky Payne, who's our district psychologist, did a snapshot of our district. So we are above the national average for students with self-regulation and neurological disorders. So autism spectrum, ADHD, emotional disturbance. The national average is 52, or sorry, the national average is, I messed that up. The national average is 24 and we're at 40. For students with learning needs, we are a little bit below the national average. That's at 52% and we are at 40. And so those are students with specific learning disability or in the pre-K age level with a developmental delay. And then she did specifically, because our numbers are so high with the self-regulation, Sky looked at the emotional disturbance compared to the national, and we are almost double in the district compared to the national average. National average is 5 and we are at 9%. So we do have a high population of students with self-regulation disorders. Virtual teachers, we were able to go down to 1 at each of the secondary schools. We had started the year at 2.5 at the middle school. We moved 1 teacher down from the high school. And now we only have 2 in the whole district. We have 1 middle school and 1 at the high school. And we did fill one of our vacant positions here at the high school by hiring an in-person special education teacher. So we are hopeful that he will stay next year. He's done a great job in the short period of time that he's here. So we look forward to having him on board. The paraprofessional performance reviews are all done and out to paraprofessionals. For the first year rollout, it went pretty well. Teachers were a little bit nervous about filling the forms out. The union has some suggestions they're going to pass along to us, and we will take a look at those and revise how we need to. We've already found a few things that we want to do differently next year, but it was well received by the support staff. They were encouraged to get the information. Overall, everyone is doing well. We have a couple areas where we're going to ask staff to create some goals for next year, but overall the staff performance reviews were good. We have had a substantial increase from families and school teams asking for paraprofessional support. I think the more students struggle, the more people feel that they need help. And we don't want to get back to where we were years back, where we had almost 100 paras in the district. We don't want to go there. So Andy had created a couple years ago a para protocol that we changed and revised a bit to fit the rules change in the Act 173, and looking at that data and really understanding what a student needs, why they need it, and how we can provide it. So the new protocol that is going to get rolled out next week, we have 3 students that are going to be the pilots for it. Really looks at the student need and really looks at what the team is asking for and how we can help it within the system that we already have. And if it really comes down to a student is needing a one-to-one support, then we have the data that backs that up and we have a plan for that. So we are hopeful that that will help families understand more about how we look at disabilities and support students. Professional development for paraprofessionals. Even before Sky's report came out, we already knew that we had that high percentage of students with self-regulation disorders and needs. So we launched a 3-part series for our paraprofessionals with our BCBA to look at some specialized training in those areas. So what these disabilities mean, what it looks like, what you're going to see in the classroom, strategies to handle those situations a little less personally, and what do we do? So that happened first in March. They had their second one today, and then in May they'll have their last one. So hopefully we will. So far we've gotten good reviews from the first 2. And then that brings us to the targeted monitoring. I did do a separate sheet for that, just explaining to the board the different cycles. WNESU during systemic monitoring was COVID shutdown. So any of the delays that we had with new referrals, with annual IEPs, with triennial evaluations. We did delays on all of those as we are expected to do, and the state did not accept them. And so they were considered non-compliant, which threw us into the next level, which is selective monitoring. I think the positive is that for secondary and pre-K, we are have a pattern over the last few years of 100% compliance. So at the high school, that's the transition planning. Our students on IEPs have good transition plans for working with families, and they have positive outcomes for after graduation. Summaries of performance are something that all of our special ed students get to take with them. They can give it to an employer, they can give it to a college. We are at 100% with that. And then the pre-K, the transition from Part C to Part B, we are 100% with that and have been for several years. So where we fell short was indicator 11, which is that initial referral. That's okay. Our annual review dates and the triennials. The standards for the state are high. For initial evaluations, it's 100%. You cannot make a mistake. You have to have 100% compliance or you're not in compliance and they tick you up to the next level. Annual review dates are 95, triennials are 95, again, super high. We did in indicator 11 have a corrupted document. The AOE did not let us know that. And when my admin assistant and I figured it out, we asked if we could fix it. We showed them that we had the document. You can, when you make a correction to a document, the date stamp is there. They would not allow us. So we were pretty low. We were at 32%. So that would have been much higher. We're close on the annual reviews and close on the triennials. So we have the systems in place. We actually started it last year to correct these. And right now we only have one evaluation that is late, and that's because we have not been able to reach the parent after trying for a month and a half. So that is going to be our only one. Everything else has been in compliance, and we will send our reports to the state by June 1st. And I hope that is the end of our targeted monitoring.
But Stacey, as you pointed out, with the 100%, I mean, one parent you can't get in touch with.
Right.
It's almost an impossible to reach that, and but every effort is made to always be in compliance.
Yep.
So.
I'm sure others saw it, but I had seen the DEAR article.
Yeah.
And read about it and came in and said, Andy, are we in that targeted monitoring category?
Yeah.
But in the article, it noted that more than 100 schools in the state of Vermont are in the targeted monitoring category right now. Yeah.
And I would add, we've been in it before
We have.
and worked our way through it. So it's not the end of the world. You just have to progress it.
And I was here and part of that team with Sharon Reynolds. When I came on board under the administrative team, we were in the middle of that. So yeah. So I have every confidence that we will be done with this by July 1.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. How many one-on-one pairs are there in the?
I would have to get you that.
Okay.
The majority of our one-to-ones are in our life skills classroom at the high school and at Westminster. However, with move-ins and significance of disabilities that are coming up, we have many more one-to-ones at the middle school this year than we have had in the past. And there's some incoming kindergartners that we are going through this protocol. That's what's happening next week. That teams and families are requesting one-to-ones that are significantly impaired students. So I think that number is going to go up, but I can get that for you and send out.
That's what interesting. I just really appreciate that you're doing this targeted PD for paraprofessionals. They're by and large ignored in professional development, so that's great. I wonder if in the future, will you do, this is very behavior based, will you also do, because the paras are the least trained of in providing academics, but they often provide our academics to our neediest students. Yeah. So are there future plans to do academic trainings for
So the PD plans right now are in development.
Okay.
So our department is kind of getting our list together of what we feel is important. We're going to meet with some in-house stakeholders and then develop a plan according to Deb's new process for the PD next year. Yep.
I would just like to also add, when we were negotiating support staff contract, we introduced extended professional development days so that we could provide even more professional development, and they'd be paid days for the support staff to come in, and that was something that they were not interested in doing. So a lot of the PD that has to be provided is during early release days, which is one of the reasons why we have early release days, because
It's the
otherwise.
opposite of parent work. All the parents want.
So I just,
I would love that.
I'm pointing that out because I know that, and there's and I know that early release days are to be a challenge for our families, but that is one of the reasons. So it's one of the only ways we can get training for our paraprofessionals.
And we were lucky enough to have our strategy approved in ARP to allow for us to contract with the BCBA to come in and do this. So coming out of grant funding.
Which is some of the COVID money.
Yeah.
Jason, yes.
Thank you, sir. Did you say their paraprofessionals get reviews from, who reviews them?
I do. Our secondary coordinator does, the principals do, at least one general educator and one special educator that they work with, and then they do a self-evaluation.
I think that's great. So every paraprofessional gets a review and you let them know how they're doing,
Yes.
good, bad, or indifferent?
Yes.
What started that policy?
Andy started, I don't know what started, but when Andy came on.
Years ago.
Yeah, we tried it previously and it did not go over well. The paras were very upset. We didn't have a big enough pool of staff to give feedback, so it kind of got dropped. When Andy came on board as the superintendent and the evaluations of each department started coming, we're like, we need to try this again. So I kept it very simple, and the union had a look at it. It was presented to staff as this isn't a way to look at whether you're going to get fired. That's not what this is. This is a way for us to gather data on what do we need to train our staff more effectively in.
Yeah.
And so it's going to present us with some patterns over the years.
Yeah, you're just reviewing performance.
Yeah.
You're not,
Yeah.
it's
not an
a coaching
evaluation.
tool.
Yes. Yes. And so for those that sort of fall below the standard and show a lot of areas where they're developing, much like the teachers, we are going to have them develop a goal for next year. And then how can we help you with that goal? What do we need to provide you with that goal? So that's where we are right now. They've gotten it, they're reviewing it, they're signing it, and we're going to start setting up some of those meetings to develop those goals for next year.
Do you think that teachers should be evaluated in the same way?
Oh, they are.
They are.
They are?
Oh, yeah.
There's a very robust teacher evaluation.
I would love to see
Special
that.
educators are being evaluated the same way that teachers
Yeah, I'd
are.
be interested in
I would
that.
love to see that, Andy.
Other questions,
Thank you.
please? Sure. I've got a couple, and this is another clarifying question. Under paraprofessional performance review, it says all paraprofessionals are to be evaluated on a yearly basis by the Director of Student Services. Is that only the special ed? Thank you. So
Yeah.
our regular
But
paraprofessionals.
it has been given, the document's been given to all the principals.
Okay,
So they do have the option to be able to use it. I did adjust it for regular ed language.
okay.
So that is out there for everybody to use.
Thank you for that clarification. And then, before the meeting officially started, we were kind of looking at these numbers and looking at potentially about a third of our students being involved in this kind of support. And Andy, why don't you add the additional numbers that you raised?
So I don't have the actual numbers, but we have a high number of our students who are on 504 plans. And then we have additionally an almost equal number of students who are on an educational support plan, which is kind of a precursor, like it's just a regular ed support that we do. It's mandated through the state. And so our numbers for the whole SU come very close. Almost 2/3 of our students are on some type of a support plan. And that could be academic, behavioral, or academic and behavioral. So we are a very high needs supervisor.
And so I'd like you in another report to give us more of a comparison of our SU to other supervisory unions in the state, because you gave us the national figures and you gave us ours. But I think as, Jason, you asked this question earlier in the evening. I mean, are we kind of the same as others? We're not. I mean, we have evidence that this is a high needs community, but it would help all the board to understand that. And then that leads to the financial implications. We have a growing number of students with these needs. So I think the finance committee and the whole of the board needs to be looking at what the implications are.
Well, and I think one of the things with Act 173 and with the rules change, so those two pieces coming, and Act 173 changed, just so that if anyone on the board doesn't remember, that changed the funding stream for the special education reimbursement from the state. So it went from a reimbursement grant to a block grant. So there's a prescribed amount of dollars that is just given to us, and there's a formula based on, it's based on your average daily membership. It's long-term, so it's years in the past. So, and then it's a state average. I'm cherry picking things, but it's a lot more complicated than what
Close enough.
Sorry?
I said, that's close enough. I mean,
Yeah. So, so basically, the piece is that we used to get reimbursed for the services that we provided. So there was almost an incentive to provide services to a degree, because you got reimbursed for those services. Now with the block grant, you just get this amount of money. And then, I look at it as a kind of, we have to pay for student services, and it just comes in to kind of try and help balance out the numbers at the end. But the difference is we have students who have needs, and they might need special education needs, but they don't meet all the criteria for special education. So there's going to be this big shift on how we support kids. And it's going to have some huge implications. We could see our numbers, as Stacy's talked about, going up and having to actually add more special educators. I would propose that we, look to add more special educator teachers as opposed to paraprofessionals, because our needs are that high.
Makes sense.
And we're going to need more people who are very, are specialists in reading, and specialists who are in mathematics, to really help address the deficits of our students. So.
And Chris, I think you bring up a good point, right? If we can find them. And
yes.
And that's where we're struggling right now is you look at these positions that are anticipated or open for next year, trying very hard to replace the virtual teachers with live people. And we have had ads out for over a couple months with 0 bites. We've had a couple bites on the early childhood position.
So some of the discussions we've had is how can we look at some of the things other districts have done, where you incentivize if a teacher were to go through an internal training program to get their special education degree. So could we provide professional development and education for our current teachers so that they could become case man or special education teachers? Also partnering with Antioch College and Keene State College. Those are the nearby ones for us. And Deb Cardain has been, very much an advocate and trying to reach out to them to see what we can do can we be, a lab district where they can kind of come in and they can plop, kids in, and I say kids, but, college age folks, and have them come in and do their learning while they're actually, working with our students. So we're actively trying to pursue that. So.
Jean? I do also wonder if as core instruction moves more towards like foundational reading skills and the science of reading, that I hope we'll start to see maybe somewhat of a decrease in learning, like in need for special education in terms of reading in the next few years is one hope. I know other districts have tried things like having, which I'm sure you've thought of all these things, Stacy, but like one special educator that's just dedicated to paperwork while the other teachers actually get to teach. And I think that's pretty enticing. Like some people might like the paperwork part, but it's also the part that kills a lot of the teachers' love of
Yeah, I
special
think
education.
one of our biggest barriers right now, is schedules.
Yeah.
At the secondary level, that would be fantastic. But right now, even if we did that, we still don't have enough space during the day to do the intervention needed. So I'm hopeful that this new solutions that we're gonna be working with is gonna help us put some intervention blocks during the day so we can move to something like that. There have been some requests from some of the virtual teachers is could we stay on as people with people? So-
Stacy, most of the time we can hear you, but it's a little hard to hear.
Yep.
Yeah, Chris,
And
please.
just one, I think, well, two things. The overabundance of kids with severe needs is not new. People should understand that. Even in my time, we always had a high percentage of kids with very severe needs. I don't know how they compare now, even when it was closer to 20% special education during that time. So that's not a new thing. That's
It's shifted. And so back then, our high percentage was autism. Our high percentage of autistic students has actually gone down, and the increase has been of students with emotional disabilities. And so that mental health crisis is hitting us more than people realize. And so that's where they take much more time, much more support, more BCBA, which is our behavior specialist. We're writing behavior plans on a weekly basis. And there's constant referrals coming in for consultations. Can the BCBA come look at this kiddo? So the more in-depth the behavior plan, the more staff you need to implement it, because you're doing tracking and data, and for paraprofessionals helping 6 other kids in the classroom, and there's a kiddo over here that's imploding. They can't do data on that kiddo while they're trying to help these 6 other students. So yes, the need has remained, but it has shifted to where it is. Yeah.
And I think 5 years ago, Chris, when I came on and we did an analysis very similar, like the autism was still high, but we were at about 28%. And right before COVID, we kind of dipped down to about 26%. So I think, and I say that as to kind of put it in perspective of the impact COVID has really had is almost because you're talking 30% now, a 4% swing, where 2% it's still significant. 4% now becomes very impactful of when we entered in. So it has been a big shift in the last few years. So
Yeah, when you look at the data of where the referrals are coming from right now, there are pockets. You can see the grade level pockets that are coming in as being referred, and they are the kids that went through COVID who were out of school during that time. And so hopefully we will do some quick intervention with them, and they will not be long-term IEP students. We'll be able to get some things in there, get their learning back up to where it needs to be, and then.
The last part of my comment was, I think Andy, being a lab school or connecting with teacher prep institutions is a great thing to do. And back in one set of negotiations, at least, we tried to actually pay special education teachers more because they were working more, but it was unsuccessful. But maybe there would be some more understanding this time around. I don't know.
Well, I really, on behalf of all of us, I should really appreciate your report and want you to keep us posted on what you're seeing. One observation again is that we're somewhat better than it is the case nationally on some of the academic skills with this population, but the behavior issues and the emotional issues are huge, and they disrupt the whole classroom. So it's a very serious issue. Hardy, did you have anything?
No, I'm fine.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, next, new business. There's a policy. Are we doing that per se?
Sure. Okay, so C15 is the student conduct and discipline. And what we did was we looked at our old F1, which was student conduct and discipline, and looked at what was being recommended by the Vermont School Boards Association. And we kind of liked a lot of what we had in our policy. So we took what we had in our old one and kind of incorporated it into the new so that we could do that. One specific area that we put in the new from the old was the guidance and discipline, because we felt that we were really specific on working and creating classroom situations that were conducive to maximizing our social and emotional growth for students, and so it was important to put that in there. And we gave an example of a very positive thing, such as the puzzle pieces that were scattered. We need to pick them up and just put those and make those together so that we could work on those together. And also we added at the bottom where to use the positive means to solve problems. We thought it sometimes an administrator might be invited to facilitate a meeting as needed. So we kind of added that in also. Other than that, the plan is very similar to what the state is requiring of us to have.
A motion?
So I make a motion that we approve C15 student conduct and discipline.
Thank you. Any discussion? I do have one. Under administrative responsibilities, it says the principal, in consultation with the educational staff, will develop an overall discipline plan. Is it the same at every school in our supervisory union, or might we have a situation where the plan is different building by building?
We felt that maybe it could be a little different, and because you have different levels, you wouldn't use the same kind of discipline possibly at a kindergarten level as you would at a 12th grade level. And so there might be some slight differences from that, but basically the guidelines are going to address the student behavior in the same way. That's why the policy is the same for all of them, with the allowance for different procedures, because those are developed at the local levels.
So we do work collaboratively. So our elementary schools have a core consistency with their student conduct and rules. But because of each building might have unique needs or differences, they're going to adjust on the, I would say, on the peripherals of what they can do. Because not, one school may have valued like a room where a student can go and if they're dysregulated and get regulated, whereas another building doesn't have that in place yet. So that's where that might differ a little bit. And then obviously middle school is going to be very different than elementary school. So we've allowed flexibility for each building, but every school is required to have the same piece. And so the principals work very closely together to do that. So.
Karen, it looks like you've got a question. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is, in the context of looking at where challenges might be happening. One little thing says, school bus. And it occurred to me, I was curious, actually, how many of our total students ride buses? Does anybody know how many ride buses?
About 50% of our students ride buses.
Okay.
Either they might ride it only one way, maybe morning or afternoon, but we're transporting about 50% of our student population. Yeah.
The reason I say this is that, I think so much we entrust our children to the school buses for their safety, for their getting on and off the bus, for the issues that are happening when they see them come on the bus and when they happen on the bus. And I'm trying to ascertain what kind of support and in the way of training or conversation happens with the bus drivers with regard to this kind of this particular conduct thing that we're looking at. I'm curious.
Yeah, so we're getting better at it. And it's always been a work in progress since I've come on in the last 2 years. This year going forward, meaning FY24, all of our drivers and bus monitors will be going through very similar training that all staff go through around identifying different behaviors and how to address different behaviors, but also how to report them. Because oftentimes, and when I say drivers and bus monitors, but that's also custodians and all of our other folks who probably have great relationships with students that we don't even know about all the time. And they see a lot.
Yeah.
And so we need them to get up to speed, because a lot of times they might say, hey, knock that off. And that might curb it right there at that moment, but it might be a much bigger problem that we're already trying to address. So making sure they have all the similar training and all the similar, and they're on the same page is one of our main goals for next year.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, well, we, I think, are ready to vote.
Kathy.
Oh, I didn't see Kathy. Thank you very much. Kathy, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
No, yes, we can.
I'm making an assumption when you did the policy for discipline, the parents are involved in situations where kids might be suspended or having a difficulty with their behavior. If not involved, at least notified. Is that, that's my assumption. Is that part of your plan with the changes you're making?
So again, that's part of the procedures that have to be developed, but all students are entitled to due process and all parents have to be notified. So if a student is suspended, the principals have to notify the parent or guardian immediately if that's happening. So
I'm also concerned about if a teacher's having problems behaviorally with a child, or the child having that much difficulty. I mean, the parents have to be notified and aware.
yes, and we have a whole system that's put in place. Part of that is what we refer to as CARES, which now I'm not going to be able to remember the acronym. So David Clark's staring at me and I can see him staring at me and I'm not looking at him. But it has to do with collaboration, academics, I can't remember the R, education, but essentially it's head up by Shelley Wilson, and she meets with every building with a team. And they discuss students and behaviors, but also attendance and what they see going on prior to getting to an EST. And a lot of what they're trying to do is, have you called the parents? Have you invited the parents in? Have you done those things? And so a lot of it is modeling to our teachers of coming up with good practices. So, but yeah, I think having been a building administrator many times when a teacher comes to me and says, you used to come to me and say, they've done this 100 times. And I say, and how many times have you called home? Because I'm going to be the first person to call home and say, yeah, this has been going on 100 times. And the first thing the parent says to me is, nobody's ever let me know. And so it's imperative that our teachers are communicating with parents and with guardians. So.
And I just wanted to comment on Karen's, what she's saying about the kids on the bus. It's really important that the bus drivers are all trained to look at kids that come onto the bus for the, as their day starts on the bus, that child's having difficulty. That bus driver should be notifying somebody at the school to give a heads up that this kid is out of sorts. It's just really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
And if I could just CARES is coordination, assessment, response, and education team. So.
Thank you.
Sharon?
Yes, Krista.
There is something under firearms, so it's cross-reference. It says firearms. It should say firearms and weapons. Ours is called firearms and weapons. And that's just minor because that's just the title of our, at the very bottom of the policy on the cross-reference.
Oh, that we'll consider that a typo. That's fine, and that can be fixed. We made a note of that. So I'd like to take a vote on this. And let me start with Karen. we're voting on the motion to approve.
I say,
Thank you, Kathy.
Yes,
Thank you, Jason.
Yes.
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 Okay,
Yes.
very good. Thank you. That passes unanimously again. And Andy, the next item is approval of LEAP. If you could take us through that.
So the LEAP is what we refer to that. It's a local education agency plan, and it's just the assurances under the Individuals with Disability Education Act, Part B. And it's very similar to what we'll be bringing in May, which is just about the grants, just the board authorizing us the ability to expend the funds once we receive them, which is that block grant that we were talking about. So it's just that basically what you're agreeing to is that we would be following all the federal guidelines around the federal grants and not using them inappropriately and reporting as we are supposed to be accurately. So it's a yearly signature.
I would move to approve the LEAP.
It's routine. We didn't all get to see it, so I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's a boilerplate piece that we just have to approve and lets us get our money.
So restate it again, what we're signing.
Okay, so the board approved the LEAP, is it called the LEAP plan or?
The local education agency plan
Yeah,
assurances.
Okay, the local education
Agency
plan assurances.
And is there a time you need it signed immediately? Is
Yes.
that the issue?
Yeah.
So it's straightforward, it's normal. All right.
It's to be done every year. Yeah.
All right, with that, there's a motion on the floor that the LEAP, that we just heard the long title,
Assurances.
be approved.
I get the assurance.
You're right, exactly. So any further discussion?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, with that, Karen? Motion on the floor.
yes.
Thank you, Kathy.
yes,
Thank you. Jason?
Yes.
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 Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yes, thank you.
that has to be
Unanimous.
signed, so we should have had it and
Just the
I beg
board,
your pardon?
just the board chair signs.
signed.
You left.
Yeah, that,
And he's handing it to you.
understood. So with that, in director's comments, you guys did a great job for the most part, asking questions, getting through. That was a whole lot of content tonight, and more additional comments were made that were all relevant. So this might be a time if people want to make additional comments about anything that was discussed tonight or anything else you want to bring forward in director's comments. I'll start, Molly, with you.
I'll start, thank you.
Okay.
I'm all set.
just thank you to all of you for all the support that you've given my family over the last few weeks. I appreciate every one of you. Thank you.
I'm all set.
Jason?
So,
All set.
All set as well. Okay. Karen?
I just was very happy to hear about the bus drivers and the training that they're going to get and support.
Kathy?
The moving, I will tell you that the moving of papers, whatever is happening is, the reverberation is real. I don't know what that, it's strong. That's all I have to say from the external.
All the jackets.
Moving of papers is distracting. Sorry about that. Okay. Kathy?
I think I'm all set. I want to thank everybody that did reports. Gives us a lot of information and discussion. Thank you.
Pleasure. I would make one additional comment. Andy had an agreement, a 3-year contract that was signed a while back by the previous, actually 2 chairs ago of the Supervisory Union Board. And then it was revised and not to change the financial aspects of it at all. in February, but to clarify the part about his goals and the accountability and the evaluation process related to all of that. And I just want to report that Andy has produced his first quarterly report, and that we're about to set up a series of executive committee meetings for the chairs of the respective boards to come together, and then we'll bring all of that to the full board on a routine basis. But I'm just pleased that we set up a process, got it reestablished, and he's come through with the first of those reports. So thank you to everybody. I'll ditto what Kathy said. Thank you to each of you who reported tonight. Very important, very helpful. We do need to address the date of the next meeting. It does conflict with the professional development opportunity for board chairs and board members throughout the state and superintendents. It's the same date as our next scheduled SU board meeting, and board chairs and the superintendent are all required to have a minimum of 8 hours of professional development in the academic year. So the fact that we have a board meeting at the same time as this one has been scheduled is a bit of a problem. So I don't know whether we could ask for the southern part of the state to get a special training. This one's up at Lake Champlain, not so easy to get to and get back. If we were even going to try to attempt that, it's from 1 to 5 on May 17th. What do you think, Andy?
I don't think they'll accommodate us. But we could definitely find another date to hold the meeting. I mean, I don't know if like.
You have the alternative first.
Or the 24th would be another.
There's 5 Wednesdays.
There are 5 Wednesdays in May, says
So
Chris.
we moved it to the 4th one, the 24th. We had to have an hour training that day, but it gets done at 5 and it's by Zoom.
I'm actually out of town.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to skip May? Should we skip May? Don't be skipping. Sorry, no, we can't do that. Can we?
We could look at the 10th, which would be the 2nd. I know it's off. I mean, I'm just trying to think of, because the 3rd is like right around the corner. So,
Right.
that if we're going to produce reports and everything, we'll need a little bit of time.
Well, let's see if we can explore some alternatives. Let's hold May 17th still. And we can try to figure out other ways to get 8 hours of professional development training for the chairs, perhaps. Maybe it doesn't have to be in that format.
Yeah, that day is in person too, though. So if we're doing in person and then trying to get here for a 6 o'clock meeting, we've got to leave there
It's not
by
possible.
3:30.
Yeah.